Why your autistic partner often struggles to apologize even when he genuinely feels terrible. Not because he's cold, not because he's a narcissist, not because he lacks empathy, but because the neurology of stress, alexithymia, and executive dysfunction can trap remorse behind a wall the autistic brain literally can't navigate under pressure. Most autistic adults deal with executive function struggles. That can include task initiation, memory retrieval under stress, sequencing, time awareness, follow-through, transitions, prioritization, and mental disorganization. So a task that looks simple externally may be surprisingly hard internally. For example, pay the bill, call the dentist, return the form, reply to the text, put away the package. Then, when these things don't get done, the neurotypical spouse may understandably ask, well, why didn't you just do it? But if your ASD partner has years of feeling behind, criticized, confused, or inadequate, that question can land like, what is wrong with you? Now shame enters. And shame makes honest accountability almost impossible. Let's look at a real life example here. We're going to make this real. Imagine this moment. You say, I feel like you don't listen to me anymore. You're not asking for a debate, you're asking for a connection. But here's what happens internally for your ASD husband. First of all, he thinks, don't listen? That's not accurate, I do listen. 2, when specifically did this happen, this business of me not listening? Step 3, okay, well, if I respond to her emotionally right now, I might validate something that isn't factually correct. Step 4, he thinks, I need to think before I respond. So he pauses, and from your side, that pause feels like rejection. So you say, see, you're doing it right now. You're disconnecting from me right now. And now his brain goes, oh, okay, well, I'm being accused while trying to process. This is escalating. And now he either withdraws completely or responds defensively, and now you feel even more alone, and the logic gap is in motion. For most husbands on the autism spectrum, they live with an internal courtroom. The prosecutor says you failed again. The judge says you should know better. The jury says your NT wife deserves someone better. The sentence? Shame. And when shame activates, he gets rigid, he gets defensive, he withdraws, he argues to restore dignity, and perhaps most devastating, he feels defective and flawed and gives up. A lot of autistic husbands express care through problem solving, providing, being consistent, fixing what's broken, and staying loyal. Yeah, and good job. From your perspective, these are clear signals of love, and I agree, but your NT wife is often looking for something quite different. Whenever the NT wife says to her autistic husband, I feel so lonely in this marriage. And I don't fault you for saying that, but when you say that, he doesn't hear a call to action or a bid for connection. He hears that as a sign of failure on his part. Let me introduce you to what I call the logic gap. This is the space between how you process emotional experience and how your ASD husband processes incoming information. Most autistic men process emotions through cognition first, not because they lack emotion, but because their brain organizes input differently. So when you say something like, I feel like you don't prioritize me, your brain is really saying, connect with me emotionally right now. But his brain hears, problem statement detected, analyze for accuracy. So instead of responding emotionally, he goes internal. He starts scanning. What did I do? When did this happen? Is this objectively true? What's the correct response? And here's the key. That process takes time. When it comes to social and emotional nuances, your ASD husband is a slow, very slow processor. For many autistic adults, especially those who have spent years masking, joy can look quieter, subtle, more internal, and more neurological than social. What does that mean? That means they may feel deeply content without looking expressive. They may feel safe without appearing affectionate. They may feel connected without performing connection. And that distinction matters. One of the most misunderstood realities about autism is that high intelligence can camouflage developmental struggles. The autistic person may have extraordinary strengths in pattern recognition, logic, memory, systematizing, technical learning, abstract reasoning. These strengths create an illusion of global maturity. People unconsciously assume, well, if he's this smart, You should also know how to manage emotions and manage relationships and manage stress and have empathy and take on daily household responsibilities. But neurological development doesn't work that way. Hey, quick message to neurotypical wives out there. I've got a hard message to hear, but I'm going to say it anyway. If your autistic husband needs an excessive amount of alone time, it might be an indication that he doesn't love you. I know, it's hard to hear. Now, if you believe that, I have a '69 Camaro sitting out in my garage. It's been up on blocks for 2 decades, and it's only been driven by a little old lady on Sunday mornings. Yeah, so if your autistic spouse needs alone time, that doesn't mean he doesn't love you. Needing alone time is not rejection, it's regulation. Autistic brains process more input more intensely. So time alone isn't distance, it's recovery. So when your ASD spouse steps away, he's not leaving you, he's protecting his nervous system so that he can come back present and not depleted. So love is not measured by constant closeness, it's measured by capacity. Alone time doesn't mean I don't love you. It means I want to be my best self with you, and right now I can't do it because my battery's dead. Let's look at how trauma and autism intersect. Many autistic adults live with relationship trauma, even if they were never physically abused. Trauma doesn't require, dramatic events. It requires repeated experiences of confusion, punishment, rejection, invalidation. And so common sources of trauma for autistic adults include chronic misunderstanding, being punished for traits they couldn't control, social exclusion or bullying, being told they're wrong, repeated relational failures without explanation, and having to mask to survive hostile environments. And over time, the nervous system begins to equate social tension with danger. And so that's when you get avoidance behavior in autistic adults. Many adults with ASD level 1 go undiagnosed. They grew up in a time when quiet, quirky, smart, or independent kids slipped under the radar. And as adults, they often thrive in predictable routines, excel in specialized areas, love deeply, but struggle in neurotypical relationships. And their partners, often neurotypical, end up confused, lonely, or misunderstood, not realizing the communication styles are neurologically different, not intentional. In psychology, there's actually 5 stages of growth in a marriage, but according to your autistic husband, there's only 2. There's the romantic phase, and the romantic phase is over phase, and that's it. Now, you're not lazy, you're not unreasonable, and your autistic partner isn't being defiant, passive-aggressive, or uncaring. What you're running into is something I call the executive function wall. And until you understand this wall, every conversation about chores or organization or follow-through will feel like you're speaking different language. Had a question from a neurotypical male who is currently dating a woman on the autism spectrum and wants to know what to be watching for so he doesn't misinterpret anything. That's a great question. So women with ASD often consciously imitate social behaviors like facial expressions, tone of voice, small talk in order to blend in. But you need to know, as her boyfriend, this is exhausting and often leads to burnout. So she may appear socially capable but feel emotionally drained after interactions, and she's going to need a long recovery period alone. Another thing worthy of note that you need to be aware of is, rather than obvious outward behaviors, anxiety in females with ASD is often internalized, and that shows up as rumination, perfectionism, people-pleasing, and so on. Another thing worthy of note is many women on the autism spectrum report feeling like they don't know who they really are because they've spent years adapting to others' expectations and masking. It would also be good for you to know some of the common sensitivities with ASD women. Noise, fabrics, clothing tags, lighting, smells, and also know that many women on the spectrum quietly endure this discomfort instead of expressing it. Another thing worthy of note is, and this is contrary to stereotypes, most autistic women, if not all of them, feel deep empathy, but they do struggle with knowing how to respond and showing emotion the right way, so that may appear a little awkward to you. Your girlfriend with ASD may rely on memorized phrases or conversational scripts, and she may have difficulty with understanding sarcasm, subtext, unspoken expectations. So another thing worthy of note is you probably won't see any visible meltdowns in her. Women on the autistic spectrum often experience internal shutdowns, dissociation, withdrawal, and they may frequently be misdiagnosed with depression or anxiety disorder. I think that's probably the super duper nutshell. So that gets you in the ballpark. All right. Here's something most neurotypical wives don't realize. You didn't stop being lovable. You stopped being your autistic husband's special interest. You know, when you first met, you were novel, complex, stimulating. And for someone with ASD, novelty often triggers intense focus, deep attention, curiosity, emotional energy. But here's the hard truth. Special interests aren't built to last forever. You know, once something becomes familiar, once it stops activating the brain in the same way, the intensity naturally fades. Now, that doesn't mean he stopped caring or that he stopped loving you. It doesn't mean that you failed, or it doesn't mean that you weren't enough. It simply means his brain moved on the way it always does with special interests. But that's a loss. That sudden emotional distance, it can be devastating, especially when no one explains what's happening. So you're not imagining it, you're not too needy, and you're not broken for wanting connection. Now, if this resonates with you, you're not alone, and this conversation matters more than people realize. There's a lot of neurotypical wives that didn't understand in the early going of the relationship that their husband was on the autism spectrum, so they took all of these ASD traits as a personal affront, and why wouldn't you? So if you stopped being your ASD husband's special interest, what replaced you? Well, in most ASD marriages, the focus doesn't disappear, it redirects. It redirects to something more predictable, controllable, something that doesn't require a bunch of emotional reciprocity. It could be work, gaming, technology, routines, hobbies, research systems, alone time. So special interests aren't about love. It has nothing to do with that. It's about emotional regulation. His special interests calm the nervous system. It reduces uncertainty. It demands less emotional risk. And that's why it hurts so deeply. You didn't get replaced by another person. You got replaced by something easier. So that's hard to hear. Now, this isn't a competition you could win, and it isn't a reflection of your worth. But here's the question that matters. What do you need now? If emotional connection isn't naturally wired the same way, what do you need now? Now, if this sounds familiar, like, subscribe, comment below. I will respond to your comments. I've got a lot of videos coming up because there's a lot more to unpack on this topic. Okay? Alexithymia means difficulty identifying, understanding, or expressing emotions. Most autistic adults experience some degree of this. So imagine your ASD partner feeling dread, embarrassment, panic, shame, fear of criticism, but he can't clearly name it. He just knows something feels bad, very bad, fast. So when you, as the NT wife, ask a direct question, your ASD spouse doesn't say, well, I feel ashamed that I forgot and I'm afraid of disappointing you. It's not what he says, that's what's going on. But he doesn't have access to that sentence in real time. Instead, he feels pressure and reacts defensively. That's why you, as the NT spouse, may get denial, stonewalling, blame shifting, changing details, irritability, shutdown, sudden anger. Sometimes the lie is covering the mistake, but sometimes it's covering the emotion that your ASD spouse can't process. That's a huge difference, right? Now let's talk about what the wall feels like internally. Let me describe what many autistic adults tell me. They say things along the lines, I know it needs to be done. I'm thinking about it constantly. I feel pressure and shame, but my brain won't move. That's not resistance. It's cognitive paralysis. The brain is stuck asking, see, where do I start? What's the first correct step? How long will it take? What if I do it wrong? What if I get interrupted? And while the processing loop is running, initiation is blocked. From the NT's perspective, it looks like procrastination. But what's going on inside your ASD spouse is he's free. So it's not just enough to do for her. And I know that's how a lot of you guys show your love. Seriously. A lot of you guys show your love by doing for her. And many of you do a wonderful job with that. You work, you bring home the money, you may do some chores around the house, you may do some helping out with taking care of the kids and whatnot. And when you do something for her, you know, like, I don't know, change her oil on in her car or something like that, you're task oriented, and your task that you spent your time and energy on something for her, that is how you show your love. And hopefully she understands that. But it's not enough. It's not enough just to do for her. That's only 50% of the equation. The other part is you have to be with her. There's doing for and there's being with. She's missing the part where you're supposed to be with her. That's what she's wanting. She's saying, I want some emotional reciprocity. I want some empathy. That's the being with part. And being with her is an ongoing project. So if you want to turn it into another task, hey, fine. So put it on your to-do list. At 5 o'clock, I'm going to be with my wife, not with my cell phone and my computer. Or I'm not going to be distracted with other things. I'm going to be with my wife in the sense that I'm focusing on her, focusing on us, focusing on the team. So here's the reframe. Instead of saying, how do I get him to change? Ask yourself, what do I need to stay emotionally steady, knowing who my ASD husband is? Well, if he has ASD, he's going to have some emotions blindness. He's going to be out of touch with his feelings and other people's feelings. And also his display of emotions will be muted, with the exception of anger. If he's sad, you may not know the difference between when he's sad, happy, surprised. But if you notice that he's angry, you'll know what's going on is anxiety. So there's anxiety that displays as anger, and pretty much all other emotions are muted, and it's just your best guess as to what he might be feeling. So to help you better understand his emotions, just know that he's not going to display emotions to the degree that you're going to be able to read. And you said, how can I better understand what he might be feeling in different situations? Again, I would go for the thoughts instead of the feelings. If you get the sense that he's feeling something that's off and is disconcerting to you, instead of asking him how he feels, I would just say, I'm not accusing you of being angry or anxious. It's my download. It appears to me that you might be agitated. I don't know. Is there something on your mind? So you're coming at it from a thought angle, because he'll know probably what he's thinking in the moment, not so much what he's feeling. Do you know what the absolute number one thing that causes the neurotypical wife to be angry and resentful? Not getting her emotional needs met. You know the number one thing that causes the ASD husband to be angry and resentful? Being criticized for not meeting emotional needs. Question from a YouTuber, because I have watched many of your videos and you talk about the autistic person being your spouse. When are you going to, and the rest of that message reads, when are you going to talk about dating someone on the autism spectrum? This person says that they are dating someone and they're wondering if they should even be in the relationship with this person. So with respect to dating someone on the autism spectrum, I would certainly never discourage you from doing that. There's way more strengths than challenges that come with ASD. There's going to be some challenges. I'm not trying to minimize, but on a cautionary note, if it goes like it usually goes, he's going to do some masking. So you're going to kind of get a misread in the romantic phase of the relationship, a misread on his social skills and emotional intelligence. Also, it's likely that you're going to be one, if not his main special interest. So you're likely to get a lot of attention. And it can be a little deceiving because you're getting a lot of attention and he's heavily masking. And so you think, wow, pretty nice guy. Then when he gets comfortable with you and reverts back to his previous special interest, and the romantic phase is over, you may feel like, what happened? I thought I was in a relationship with a cat, and it looks like I'm in a relationship with a lone wolf. So that may or may not happen to the degree that I might be worried about, but it's likely that it will happen to some degree or another. The business of the mask comes off and the special interest shifts over to something else that's not you. So, I don't know. I know that sounds, well, hell, that's one hell of a warning. Well, I'm not really warning you to not date the guy. I'm sure he's a nice guy. You like him or you wouldn't be with him. I'm sure I would like him fine. He might be smarter than me, general IQ-wise. He's going to be high in logical intelligence. He's going to have, again, strengths that a neurotypical male his age won't have. He's going to be great at thinking in pictures, systematizing. He's going to be great at being able to understand logical things and rational things, graphs, figures, facts, numbers, engineering, computer programming. I don't know what he does, but so don't take this message as me saying, oh, for God's sake, run. No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying give him a chance, but know what you're dealing with, okay? So don't be a chicken. Go date the guy. Acceptance in a neurodiverse relationship is not surrender. Acceptance is clarity. Acceptance says, this is how my ASD husband is, this is how his brain works, and these are the boundaries I need to stay emotionally healthy. Hey, let's talk about autism versus narcissism. Autistic men are often accused of being narcissistic, but the two are not the same thing. So here's the difference. Listen, narcissism is about power and control. Autism is about neurology and perception. A narcissistic partner understands your emotions, but they don't care. An autistic partner does care, but he may literally not see your feelings unless it's made explicit. So this is why the autistic masking can often accidentally look like gaslighting. So when an autistic husband says, I didn't realize that hurt you, he genuinely means that. He wasn't being manipulative, he was missing the signal due to mind blindness. But here's the key for all you guys with ASD listening here. Autism explains behavior, it does not excuse harm. So, healthy autistic men learn to say things like, well, I may not always read emotions well, so please tell me directly when something hurts you. That's not weakness, that's emotional leadership. Autism isn't about power. Narcissism is. Autism is about learning how to see what your brain doesn't naturally detect. Many women begin dating a man on the autism spectrum without realizing autism is even influencing the relationship at all. In fact, one of the most confusing aspects of adult autism is that many autistic men don't initially appear obviously autistic. They're highly intelligent, professionally successful, socially functional in structured environments, and capable of carrying on conversations that seem completely typical during the early stages of dating. And they may hold demanding careers, maintain friendships, speak confidently about subjects they know well, and even appear calm, stable, and emotionally grounded compared to previous partners the woman has dated. Now, this is one reason so many women feel blindsided later when the relationship begins to feel emotionally confusing, disconnected, rigid, lonely, or unexpectedly difficult. A quick message to neurotypical wives who may be experiencing CPTSD. If you're a wife who feels on edge all the time, this isn't because you're weak. If you've been living in emotional unpredictability, walking on eggshells, explaining yourself over and over, never knowing when connection will disappear, then your nervous system adapts to survive. That's hypervigilance, anxiety, emotional shutdown. Those are trauma responses, not character flaws. Now, CPTSD doesn't always come from violence. Sometimes it comes from years of emotional absence. You didn't imagine this. Your body learned what your mind tried to minimize. And healing starts when you stop asking, what's wrong with me? And start asking, what happened to me? You're not broken, you're responding. Now, if you've tried therapy and still feel stuck, this isn't because you're doing it wrong. Talk therapy can help understand trauma. But CPTSD lives in the nervous system, not just a story. So you can know why you're anxious and still feel unsafe in your body. You can set boundaries and still brace for emotional fallout, especially when the environment that caused the trauma hasn't actually changed. Healing doesn't happen in isolation. You can't calm a nervous system that keeps getting re-triggered. CPTSD healing often requires nervous system regulation, external safety, and sometimes real life change, not just insight. So if therapy hasn't been enough, that doesn't mean you failed. It means the approach was incomplete. Now, also, if you're exhausted from trying harder to heal, then this may be why. CPTSD teaches your nervous system that safety depends on effort. So you over-explain, you over-regulate, you stay alert, you stay available. But healing doesn't come from more vigilance. It comes from less threat. So when you push yourself to do better, your body hears danger, not growth. You don't heal trauma by proving you're strong enough. You heal your nervous system when it finally feels safe enough to rest. If trying harder has made you more tired and exhausted, more anxious, more numb, that's not a failure. That's your nervous system asking for safety, not pressure. Would you like to schedule a paid private coaching session? This will be in the form of a face-to-face Zoom call. Underneath any of my videos, you'll see this Calendly link. If you click on that link, it'll open up my calendar. You can pick the available days and times that works for your schedule. You'll get a follow-up email immediately after purchasing a session that will have the Zoom link that coincides with the day and time that you picked. I will get an email too that you scheduled a session, and I will be available on that exact day and time, and we will talk. I look forward to working with you.